Good morning, everyone. Buenos días a todos. Bienvenidos. Welcome to today's Friday with the City, Emergency Planning and Preparedness. Thank you for joining us this beautiful rainy day. I hope you're all are home or driving safely to your destination. And if you are driving, of course, we hope that you're not watching this, but perhaps just hearing it as a background. We're very excited that it's Friday. We're very excited to welcome everyone to today's Friday with the City webinar. As you all know, your local Chamber of Commerce continues to advocate and work directly and indirectly for our business community as a whole. And our number one priority is to continuously update you and bring information that would be of assistance for the sustainability and growth of your business. And one of the most important things for our businesses also is to make sure that we're ready as we are in hurricane season, and how do we prepare to make sure that our business is protected, our employees, and of course, our clients, our customers feel safe during this time. We, as I mentioned today, we are talking about emergency planning and preparedness, and we have great speakers that will be updating us and providing very educational information that I highly stress to please take notes. Share this Facebook Live if you're joining us via Facebook. Start a watch party. Let everyone know that we're here to inform you of wonderful information that is key to the to the preparedness of this season. And I know we've been having so much rain, and before we started today's webinar, we were talking, and I know Barry, of course, has an update regarding the weather, but I'm just going to say it, and I hope you don't mind, Barry, but just enjoy the rain for today. I think that's the last of the rain for at least maybe the next 48 hours. So again, we invite everyone to join us. Of course, as I said, you can go ahead and join us and share the information to your colleagues or with your colleagues and friends. You can go ahead and do so by joining us via Zoom, also Facebook Live. And we love to hear from our audience, and we love to hear from our city and of course our members. Let us know your questions. We invite you and encourage you to use the Facebook chat or the Zoom chat to communicate your questions and or concerns. We have allocated a Q&A session towards the end of today's presentation. We want to make sure that we continue to be a voice for our businesses and stress your concerns to our leadership and those that have the ability to answer these type of questions. So, as I mentioned, this has been an initiative of the Brownsville Chamber of Commerce in collaboration with our City of Brownsville. And we just celebrated a year that we started this initiative, and it has been very successful. In our usual normal days, we would typically gather on Friday mornings, have some fresh coffee, always typically sponsored by many of our businesses that would come together in support of this initiative. We would get to see everyone face to face, hug everyone, and it's been a while since we last had a Friday with the city, and it's always heartwarming to be able to do this type of events that we just come together, have a very casual conversation, because today is all about having that casual conversation, very raw, and most importantly, I can't stress enough the importance of hearing from our businesses. As we hear from you, it guides us to better serve our business community. It guides us to understand and get a consensus of what's really most important right now during this pandemic. And of course, allowing us to assist you to grow your business. So in today's webinar, we're gonna go ahead and speak and cover topics on disaster and hurricane season preparedness, as well as COVID-19 response efforts. The mission of the Brownsville Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security is to serve the citizens of the city of Brownsville by providing courteous, accurate, up-to-minute access to city information and services. Provide planning and efforts to prevent, mitigate the effects of, prepare of, respond to, and recover from emergencies and disasters, whether natural or man-made. The Office of Emergency and Management and Homeland Security is overseen by Odee Ann Leal. Ms. Odee Leal joined the City of Brownsville in 1995 and currently serves as the City of Brownsville Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security Director. Ms. Leal has over 20 years of experience in several capacities within the City of Brownsville and over 10 years of emergency management experience. Odee holds several certifications in emergency management and homeland security and sits on various boards. Also with us this morning, we have Barry Goldsmith, warning coordination meteorologist representing the National Weather Service here in their local office of Brownsville. And I was telling everyone before we started, we talked behind the scenes, and I was telling Barry, I'm like, Barry, I don't think you remember me. We met maybe 10, 15 years ago, and it's been that long since I said hi to him. But, I'm always very happy that, we have this platform that allow us to connect. And I think during this difficult, challenging times, we truly get to appreciate what's most important, and that's family, and of course our friends and our colleagues. So Odee and Barry, thank you very much for joining us. On behalf of my leadership, my board directors, our team members, and of course our membership, we appreciate your time. We know that during this challenging times, as we all come together and face them and prepare, you are extremely busy, and for that we appreciate you, and we look forward to your presentation today. Also, as we continue to move forward, as I said, if we do have any questions, if it aligns with your current presentation, we can go ahead and ask during the presentation as well, or we can always wait until the very end. So, Odee, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning, Esme. Thank you for having us today. We're excited to be here with the City of Brownsville residents, informing them on the hurricane preparedness. I really appreciate you giving us this time today. And as Esme was saying, I'm Odee Ann Leal. I'm the Emergency Management Coordinator for the City of Brownsville. Will Barry be going first, Esme?
Barry? Yes, Barry, I don't know if you can hear us.
Yes, I can, loud and clear.
Thank you. So I want to inform our audience, and of course those that are watching through Facebook and Zoom, due to the weather, unfortunately we do encounter technical difficulties at times. So should we, for whatever reason, lose connectivity, our experience has been that it usually takes 5 or 6 seconds to be able to connect. I do apologize in advance should we, of course, experience those technical difficulties. So you're always going to be hearing me, just to make sure that we're still able to hear, of course, our speakers. So Barry, once again, welcome. And, we're very excited to hear everything that you have to talk, or tell us about. And once again, welcome to your local Chamber of Commerce. And again, thank you for your time. Let's go ahead and start your presentation.
Okay, so first, thanks again, Esme. Thanks to the Chamber. Thanks to Danielle, who got the email out to one of my colleagues at the office, and he forwarded it to me, as he was unavailable today to work. We actually are filling some shifts this week into next week because vacations have started, and we still have to be operational at the office site 24/7. Regardless of the fact that we are dealing with COVID-19. Although my position, I do telework a lot. So, and that includes like days like Wednesday, I have to telework. Anyhow, a quick background about me. I've been in the Valley for 12 years, actually working on 13 as of November coming up. I've been in this position here as a warning coordination meteorologist for the same 13 years, but I'm about to complete my 35th year in the National Weather Service. So, I'm older than I look, but I love the job, and I love being able to provide information to the public, to the business community, to our core partners in emergency management and the media and others to really help prepare communities to be ready for hazardous weather events, whatever they may be. And so this year, of course, at this time of year, we always talk about the hurricane season. So I will not be talking much about the preparedness side. I do have some web links at the end, but I'm going to defer that over to Odee and then I can certainly answer questions that you may have on the weather side or the preparedness side, whatever they may be. So I guess I'm ready to get started as long as the slideshow is up. And just want to confirm that the first slide that you see should say 2020 Atlantic Season Outlook.
Yes.
Okay, so whoever's running the slideshow, and I do apologize, there are some issues with the Department of Commerce and NOAA. We are prohibited from using Zoom as a platform right now. We hope that will change because we are going to be virtually meeting for a while to come, but right now I am just doing this by phone. So when I say click or space or next, just that's the cue to click to the next either image or screen or slide or whatever it may be. So right now, let me offer next. So let's go next. And you should see a hashtag, it only takes one, and another hashtag, Hurricane Storms. And if I say nothing more for the next 20 minutes, this is all you need to know for the 2020 Atlantic hurricane season. So sear these into your memory for the next hour, and then carry that with you after this and bring it to your employees, bring it to the community. We always have to remember these two items, regardless of what the forecast is. So why do I say those two things? Next, this should bring up another slide that says why the forecast does not, in all caps, matter. But this is why we use hurricane strong and it only takes one. So some of you may remember Hurricane Beulah in 1967. It remains a storm of record for the valley, and especially Brownsville, because in Brownsville we had wind damage. On the east side we had some storm surge, and of course we had all the flooding rain. In that season there was only one major hurricane, and it was Beulah. And that was in the whole Atlantic basin, and I'll explain where that is momentarily. So people outside of this area might say it was quiet, but for the Rio Grande Valley and for Brownsville, it was the storm of record and remains so for many people. This is my favorite to explain the non-importance of the forecast. I say non-highlighted here. Hurricane Alicia hit Houston in 1983. It was a year that there were only 4 named entire Atlantic Basin. The Atlantic Basin covers about 1/3 of the northern hemisphere, by the way. Yet $9 billion in damage as of 2012, or probably over $10 billion now in the 2020 assessment, with Houston Galveston having this being the storm of record in the modern day until Ike came along in 2008. So rather interesting story. It doesn't matter what the seasonal numbers were. For Houston Galveston, this was a $9 billion storm in 1983 based on 2012 dollars. We'll move out of Texas for a minute here and go to South Florida. Hurricane Andrew cost $50 billion in damage in a season with only 7 cyclones, okay? But for all of Florida, the storm that we know as the monster of Andrew changed the way they do building codes, not only along the coast but inland. And it will be changed forever because of what Andrew did. 2017 is Hurricane Harvey. I'll speak to Harvey in a bit more detail towards the end. Why is that important? Well, it hit Texas, number one. It was the only cyclone to actually thread the needle of tracking favorable parameters to get the state of Texas. And this is why we will always harp on it only takes one, because this could happen in any season. And $125 billion in damage rivals it with Katrina in U.S. damage. And still, Houston, Galveston, and Southeast Texas are recovering today. It will probably take several more years for that whole region to fully recover. And then I'm going to throw in 2018's Great June Flood. This was a $200+ million tropical flood with no name. I like to call these Category Nada events, just as a way of remembering it. We didn't have any named cyclone. We didn't have anything more than tropical moisture, kind of like we have right now, but in a much more organized fashion over a 4-day period. And if you saw the pictures out of Los Fresnos, even out of Brownsville, but especially Weslaco, Mercedes, Mission, McAllen, there were several thousand homes that were impacted from an event that had no names. So flooding is a really important thing here. And lastly, click one more time. Tropical Storm Imelda was last year in southeast Texas. This had no category to it, just a tropical storm. But there's no such thing as only a tropical storm. There was $5 billion in flooding rainfall damage alone in southeast Texas and a little bit of Louisiana. So next slide. I could quit right now. My job here is done. But since everybody asked with bated breath, we'll go over the forecast and some other information over the next 15 or so minutes. So here's the seasonal forecast. Next slide. And you also be seeing the now the 2020 forecast. So the outlook shows a 60% probability of above average or above normal season for the Atlantic Basin, of which we'll have 13 to 19 named storms, 6 to 10 hurricanes, and 3 to 6 majors. So keep that in mind as we hit the next slide. Actually, it will be the slide after. But this slide I want to talk about briefly called the Accumulated Cyclone Energy Forecast. Now you see a bunch of a bar chart there, kind of small. It might be hard to see, but just focus your eyes on the red bar at the far right corner of the slide here, or of the actual chart. And what the accumulated cyclone energy is the combination of length and strength of hurricanes. So the longer a storm is a hurricane, and the stronger that storm is during that length, for example, 5 days at Category 5, the higher your ACE will be. And the higher your ACE is for the season means that you have an active season, not just with numbers, but also with how strong and long they are. Why does strength and length matter? Well, imagine if those storms come our way towards the U.S. coast. You could have the next Michael, the next Harvey, the next Beulah, the next Allen. And there could be all 4 of those types of storms hitting somewhere on the U.S. coast. And if you have a high ACE and they all hit and 4 of those big ACE storms hit the coastline, you're going to talk hundreds of billions of dollars in property damage wherever those storms hit combined. And that's what happened in 2005. It happened in 2008. Of course, we had Harvey in 2017. So this year, you can see it actually extends towards the edge of what's called hyperactive season. And so we hope that's not the case this year, but some of the trends are that way, and we're going to go over that shortly. So here's where we are with tropical cyclone names. We are already through 4 of them. Arthur, Bertha, Cristobal, and Dolly. So you're thinking, oh, it's already a busy season, and you'd be right. But the total ACE combined is not 200 yet. It's not even 100. In fact, it's not even 10. It's only 6. And to be average, you need to be around 92. So we have a long way to go to hit average. But the peak of the hurricane season, as you all know, is August, September into early October. So we still have another month or so before we start hitting our stride with the season. So these have all been tropical storms, not very strong. And aside from Arthur, Bertha, and Cristobal did affect land to some degree. Dolly did not. But overall, the damage has been relatively minimal compared to what could be coming up. So, by the way, Dolly is off the chart now, which is kind of good for us. I don't think the Valley would want to see Hurricane Dolly again. That could be kind of a confusing message. It was not retired simply because the damage totals were not as big as other storms that have been retired. In other words, 2 billion versus, say, 20 billion. And unfortunately, sometimes you need to have lots of destruction and fatalities to create a retired storm. We had that, I believe, with one of the I storms, and I forget the name of it, that actually came into Mexico in 2012 or 13, and it went into Veracruz, caused a lot of landslides in the mountains, and killed dozens of people, and that storm was retired. It was a low-level, Category 1 hurricane. So if I remember the name, I will state that to you shortly. So really quickly, I'm just going to show Cristobal, because Cristobal was a Western Gulf storm. It actually formed down here. Next slide, by the way. Hopefully my mouse is showing up. In the east side of the Bay of Campeche and moved due north and hit the Mississippi coast with rainfall flooding, but it had a large envelope of circulation. This was the center right here, but the impacts were felt all the way to Florida. So remember, when the forecasts come out, do not focus on the skinny black line or even the cone. focus on the forecast, and that's what we are here to do at the National Weather Service in Brownsville. So this is what I mean. We actually had tidal flooding that ran up to the dune line on South Padre Island, and people had to set up their tents and umbrellas back on the dunes or at the dune line rather than down here on the beach, even though the skies were beautiful, the temperatures were perfect for the beach. The impact of the surrounding water rises from a cyclone in the Gulf is what caused these pictures to occur. On the backside of the storm, when it made landfall, we had a 2-day heat spike on June 8th and 9th, and on those days, the heat index or feels-like temperatures rose above 110 degrees. So that has happened before in 2017 with Tropical Storm Cindy, which made landfall on the Louisiana-Texas coast. So hopefully everyone's seen the pictures here from South Padre that I took on a real nice beach day, aside from the fact that the tides were running into the dune line. Next slide. Let's talk about how hurricanes form and how they might not. We have the friends and the enemies. These are the friends and enemies of hurricanes. So click, and again, these are friends of hurricanes, not of us. If a hurricane develops and gets strong, we don't really want to see that, right? So to have low wind shear in the atmosphere is a friend. Next, click. To have moisture throughout the atmosphere is a friend. Then click again. And to have that warm to hot water temperatures at sea surface and below, known as the oceanic heat content. So I like to call these three the engine and the fuel. The engine is the low wind shear and the moisture. If you don't have an engine, you can have all the fuel in the world, but as you all know, a rocket fuel or jet fuel can't be used if you don't have a jet to run it, right? So the fuel is the warm to hot water temperatures at sea surface and below. So a lot of people say, well, the waters are really warm this year, we're going to get a big hurricane season. Not necessarily if you have the combination of high wind shear and low moisture. And I actually have a couple slides to explain that, why that matters. So you got to build the engine before you can use the fuel. So this is bad news for societies and communities on coastlines. If you have all these friends working together in concert, you can have some pretty big hurricanes. And if they make landfall, those communities are going to have, unfortunately, a lot of damage. And hopefully not fatalities, but that can happen too. So what are the enemies of hurricanes and friends of us? High wind shear, dryness in the atmosphere, and relatively mild water temperatures at the sea surface and below. So if you have those things in place, you're not going to have a very active season overall. Now, that does not mean that within windows in that season, the three friends can't get together and make a big hurricane. That has happened before, and we'll explain that one as we get later on in this discussion. So above average or not, next slide. What are we looking at this year? So we have favorable factors. The main development region, water and deep water temperatures are indeed warm. In fact, they're getting close to hot. And that could be a factor of what kind of fuel we have. Are we going to have, regular high-octane gas, or is it going to be a rocket or a jet? And that's the kind of fuel that can make these hurricanes really go once the engine is built. There's a term called teleconnections. It's the 1 to 2 week trends in the atmosphere that can favor steering as well as favor low wind shear. And Harvey is a good example of that. So it could happen within a season that could be quiet. Again, we're forecasting active season, but in locations around the country that could become briefly active based on the steering pattern and having all those friends get together, it could just be a 1 or 2 week window. And the big one here is in the yellow. If the Bermuda High develops and dominates in peak season, and just keep that in mind. We'll explain what that means shortly. So these are your favorable factors. Next, potential hostilities, periodic cold pockets in the Atlantic. Believe it or not, there are some cold pockets right now in the eastern Atlantic, part of the main development region off of Africa, which could help slow things down when those waves come off the coast. But if they don't last, it starts to warm up there, that won't be a factor. And then the big one here is the dominance of summer La Canicula. The La Canicula is a period of heat and relative dryness between early July and mid-August. It is actually when our average daily rainfall gets as low as the driest parts of the year in April and November. I bet you didn't know that. So the thing about La Canicula is the atmospheric pattern that sets it up sometimes can extend all the way back into May and all the way forward into September or October. And for the last 5 years, for a good part of summer, June, July, and August, La Canicula has been active and it has suppressed the Northwest Gulf opportunity, which is good news for Texas if you think about hurricanes and the damage they can cause. So what will 2020 bring? We don't quite know exactly yet, but we have some thoughts. And one could be ours, so I'll quickly go over this next click. 1999, I already talked about Alicia, but 1999 is Category 4 Brett. That storm just missed the valley. In fact, it was 100 miles east of us as a Category 4, and it formed in the Southwest Gulf, and these are wild cards. They are dependent on the teleconnections mentioned in the above section of the favorable factors, right? So a southwest storm could get going in any season because they don't really, the seasonal forecast does not apply to the Southwest Gulf. It applies to the main development region, which I'll show you in a moment. And then, of course, we're going to talk about Harvey a little bit towards the end here. So next slide. What's behind this forecast? Why an active season? Disregarding the first 4 storms, which really don't relate to the forecast here. So there's a big rectangle there, and that rectangle is called the main development region. We're going to talk a lot about that. You're going to see a rectangle in the next few slides. We've had something for the last 25 years called the Atlantic Multi-Decadal Oscillation. That's a mouthful. So we'll call it AMO for short. And when the AMO is in the positive phase, you kind of get all of those friends getting together. You have a stronger, wetter West African monsoon, which is the moisture you need, and the spin created by Coriolis, the Earth's rotation, to get them to spin off of the African coast. So boom, the moisture is there. Number 2, the surface trade winds and the upper level winds begin to weaken as these systems move farther west in the main development region, which is your rectangle, and that's another friend. Low wind shear, moisture, and now you're ready to go, but you need the fuel, right? So where's the fuel coming from? Well, during an active AMO, the ocean tends to be warmer. That's just because of the way the flow of the oceanic system across the globe is moving warmer and cooler water around. And in active AMO, the warmer water is moving right through the main development region. So how long does the AMO last? Well, it can last for 30 years. And this one began in 1995, and as far as we can tell, continues this year, which is year number 25. So will it continue for 5 more years? Maybe. We don't know. But right now, we're still in it. And because of these favorable factors, the AMO, I like to call it the 800-pound gorilla in the room, we are forecasting an above average season. But what else could be enhancing that forecast? Well, the sea surface temperatures. There's the story of the sea, and that is part of your AMO. And this is as of June 23rd, the last available data had it. Wherever you see these yellow colors, it's above average by about 2 degrees Fahrenheit, 3 degrees Fahrenheit. But when you see these oranges and almost red colors here in the main development region, you're talking up to 6 degrees above average. So for the forecast, which is dominated by the main development region, for the numbers that you saw earlier, we are in good stead with the fuel. Right now, we're looking at jet fuel. And if it gets a bit warmer, it could become rocket fuel in some locations. The Gulf of Mexico is always a wild card. How's the fuel doing there? Well, believe it or not, it's kind of getting warm there at the Yucatan Channel and the Southwest Gulf, Bay of Campeche. It's warm. And off of our coastline, it's been relatively warm. But in the eastern and central Gulf, it's actually cooled down. There's been a lot of rain in Florida. There's been some what we call convection or thunderstorms in the central eastern Gulf. And when it's cloudy over the Gulf, it tends to keep the waters a bit cooler. But we'll see. That can change in a week or two. So stay tuned for the Gulf of Mexico and its wild card. What about El Nino Southern Oscillation? Really quick. El Nino Southern Oscillation is the alternate warming and cooling of the eastern tropical Pacific. And you're probably thinking, what does that matter for us? I'll go into that momentarily. El Nino was coined for the Christ child. Around Christmas time, Peruvian, Ecuadorian fishermen noticed limited catch in the warm waters of that area, and it peaked in late December. So they decided to coin it El Nino for Jesus. La Nina was coined for the cooler waters. It's just the other half of the oscillation. They made it an easy conversion. It doesn't mean there's a girl child in the summer. It's not about that. And temperature and precipitation trends are generic and often can be altered by these teleconnections or conditions in the atmosphere and the oceans that can change week to week. And we mentioned that earlier, and that's important. Keep that in the back of your mind, because at the end of the presentation, we'll be talking about that briefly. So where are we now this year? Well, we're looking at neutral to La Nina, and this is the influence. Look at the area of the main development region on the right side of this slide. Hopefully we're at the next slide, by the way, neutral to La Nina influence. More hurricanes due to weaker vertical wind shear and trade winds. Aha. So you're supplementing the AMO with a neutral to La Nina. And next slide, that's exactly where we think we're going for the summer into early fall. On the left side of the screen, wherever you see blue means that you have upwelling of cooler water in the Nino region, which is the eastern tropical Pacific. When you have a pretty big mass of blue, that's a sign that we think a La Nina may be developing. So the current forecast through the peak of the season does show equal chances in the blue bar here of a La Nina developing as it is for a neutral phase. And notice the red, which is El Nino, is basically near zero. So El Nino is unfavorable, but we're nowhere near that as we look at the forecast for the summer into early fall. And if we get into this La Nina neutral, that is another favorable factor in addition to the AMO that is adding more weight or more confidence to the seasonal forecast. Next slide. So let's talk about wind shear really quickly. This is as of yesterday on Thursday. Is wind shear still dominant, or is it just too early to tell? Will wind shear be a problem for the hurricane development in the main development region as we move into summer and into early fall? The answer is we don't know yet, but typically wind shear is pretty active in June as a remnant of the seasonal activity in the atmosphere, meaning places like the mid-latitudes, even into the northern part of the tropics, that extends a bit longer into the early part of summer. So where you see red here, which by the way, you have the Gulf shown here as red just to show that, but this main development region is pretty much red until you get to the West African coast. One thing to notice here in this picture, it's a satellite photo of water vapor. Notice the black areas. Black means dry. And when you have dry on top of wind shear, you've got two enemies of the hurricane development. So right now, it's a lot of wind shear, which basically means don't expect to see a big old African wave come developing into a Category 5 hurricane in the Central Atlantic Ocean in the next week or two. It's not going to happen. Probably won't happen for the next month at this point. But as we get later in July, now we start looking towards the African coast for some activity. So keep that in mind. And here's one more, Saharan dust. I'm sure you've probably heard about the Saharan dust from a big dust storm that developed off of the Sahara Desert about a week and a half ago, and has moved all the way across the Gulf of Mexico. But fortunately for us, because dust can also sink down and cause asthmatic issues and poor air quality, we've had rain. And the rain has cleaned out the air. So that's good news for the first plume. But there's another plume that could be coming as we get into early July or late the last day or two of June. And if that reaches us, we'll probably see that haze in the sky. But in this case, it's over the main development region. That's your red rectangle here. And the dust dries out the air. So I showed you wind shear that was extending out into this area with my mouse pointer. And you have dust drying the air. So those are two enemies working against you despite the warm waters. But like I said, you could have jet fuel, rocket fuel lying, waiting to be active, but if there's no engine to run it, it'll just sit there waiting to be activated. So that's where we are with the dust. Another dust event appears to be coming westward through the main development region, at least over the next week, perhaps longer. So finally, before we hit the Harvey redux, the peak 2020 season outlook trends. Well, for a while, it looked like Canicula was going to dominate. And that was the forecast we saw back in the spring, even in the late winter. And we still do have a potential for Canicula to be active. But notice here where we have this above average prediction. What I'm showing here on this slide is the probability of above average temperatures across the country in the west and on the east coast. And in between, there's an area of equal chances. That tends to lean, tends to match what the atmospheric flow pattern will be. And I kind of drew this as an exaggeration of what the flow pattern could be. But Canicula would typically feature above average probabilities maximizing down here in eastern New Mexico, West Texas, and probably stretching to the valley. And if you think about it, this area over the Utah, Arizona area could stretch east from time to time. And if it does, that means canicula will dominate, and it will lock the door on any potential tropical cyclone, storm or hurricane, moving north out of the Bay of Campeche, moving north out of the Yucatan Channel. They will tend to be what I call Veracruzers. They'll go to Veracruz, as 13 storms have done. In fact, many of them hurricanes since the Texas hurricane drought, which we're still in, by the way, began after Ike. But here's the issue that we're seeing in the latest forecast. There's a Bermuda high that's out here creating the heat on the East Coast. And the question becomes, what's going to happen in August and September? Will Canicula dominate or will Bermuda dominate? If Canicula dominates, we're probably going to be okay down here for any of these Atlantic, main development region, even southern Gulf events coming northward. But if Canicula slides westward out towards Sinaloa, Mexico, or Baja, or northwestward into the Great Basin of the U.S., that will open the door for the Bermuda high to dominate and allow the flow pattern to steer these storms around the Bermuda high, possibly through the Yucatan Channel, and now into the Western Gulf. And that could be Louisiana, it could be Mississippi, it could be Texas. Okay, so if it becomes Texas, the question becomes where? We have no idea in June where that might be in August or September. But if there are periods when the Bermuda high is dominant, and they're combined with periods when that moisture and low wind shear is maximized, we could have multiple storms out there, cyclones I like to call them, that could be moving towards the Gulf of Mexico. So keep that in mind. It's just another reason why we have to amplify the preparedness needs right now in June into July to really be ready for August. And with that in mind, with the Bermuda high potentially being stronger than Canicula at times, we have enhanced the rainfall forecast for July through September. This is what the next slide is showing here, the slide you're on now, is the rainfall potential for July to September. And for a while, it was looking like the below average values would stretch into West Texas and possibly back down to the Rio Grande Valley, which would be similar to these patterns we've seen in the Canicula summers of recent memory. But the probability here of rainfall is now above 33%, which means it's the highest probability of the three. We have equal chances, meaning 33 of above, 33 of below, 33 of average, right? But if you're looking at 35% above, now you have probably still 33% chance of average, and now just a 31% of below, right? So your dominant one is slightly leaning towards above. And if that's the case, this is the opening for the Gulf, for the moisture coming from the Caribbean and the deep tropics to reach East Texas, right, the east half of Texas. And if that happens, accompanied by a tropical cyclone, look out. That could get interesting. Where in the east half of Texas, we really don't know. The southeast U.S. is definitely an area that we're concerned about nationwide. This is a greater than 40% probability. And that not only implies that there could be just moisture on the backside of the Bermuda high, but also tropical storms and hurricanes. And so if I was looking in the FEMA Region 4 area, which covers these states, I'd be doing my preparedness and my deployment, my resource deployment allocation, all those plans, I'd be looking really heavy at them now, because the opportunity will probably arise, especially in August and September, for this part of the country, the southeast U.S. and Florida, to be impacted. But notice Texas is in the green, so we have to look at Region 6 as well, which includes Louisiana and Texas. So I'm going to leave you with this again. Harvey's record devastation in Texas. You can see the picture on the upper right. Next slide, but this is the slide we should be on. It says Harvey. Big hurricane, Category 4, 125 billion in estimated damage. Much of that was from flooding rainfall. On the lower right there, image shows between 30 and 60 inches of rain. Houston, Galveston, Port Arthur, Beaumont. Here's an unfortunate number of fatalities, but it's very low compared to what a storm like this could do in other situations and in other parts of the world. The state of Texas did a fantastic job from the storm landfall in terms of storm surge and wind to the flooding rains that occurred in southeast Texas. Decisions made at the local, regional, and national level. Notice no fatalities from storm surge, 35 indirect deaths. Unfortunately, we still have some work to do there. so people can be safe after the storm goes through. But notice the number of homes flooded here: 300,000 flooded, 123,000 in Harris County alone, and 500,000 vehicles were flooded as well. So 15,000 homes destroyed, 25,000 damaged the coastal bend. So why does Harvey matter? This was the wind shear for the season of August and September in 2017. High wind shear Western Gulf. Like, how's it going to get through that? That's an enemy. It's a big enemy too. And there's not much moisture because we were under canicula for most of that summer. So how are we going to get a hurricane to come through? Well, guess what happened? When Harvey made its move, and it really did develop in the Southwest Gulf as a wild card. We talked about that before. Notice the wind shear in Texas. This is the next slide, by the way. It should say Harvey threaded the needle, August 24th to 26th. In Texas, I'm going to step back a slide. Wind shear was in the orange and yellows, and we'll be on the current slide. It's now blue, and blue in Texas means no wind shear. So when Harvey got north of the little bit of wind shear it had to fight through east of central Tamaulipas, it went off to the races, and literally in 12 hours went from Category 2, actually less than 12 hours, Category 2 to Category 4. And that's able to feed off of that very warm water, but now it had low wind shear, and it just went off to the races with that jet to rocket fuel. And we all saw the result in the coastal bend with storm surge and wind damage in places like Rockport, Port Aransas. But here's how it threaded the needle. So here's on the next slide. Upper left corner, there's Canicula High, right? There's the weaker Bermuda High. You're like, how's it going to come here? It's probably going to Veracruz, right? And for a while, it was going to Veracruz. But notice what happens on the lower left, number 2 here. The Canicula High moves west to Sinaloa towards Baja. It's getting out of the picture, and the Bermuda High on the right is still relatively strong. And now Harvey has nowhere else to go but into Texas somewhere. And initially, there were some forecasts showing the Rio Grande Valley, but honestly, it was never coming here, fortunately. By number 3 here, the upper right corner, it's a Category 2 off the South Padre Island, 90 miles away, in fact. And notice that there's no more flow pattern in the atmosphere. Look at the black lines, except for around the hurricane. There's almost no black lines. And what does that mean? When you get to the bottom right there, it says 4 and Category 4, there's nothing to steer it. And that was in the forecast. And that's how we knew that Southeast Texas was going to get pummeled by record rainfall, because it wasn't going to move much after it made landfall. It took 3 days for it to go from the coastal bend all the way to the Louisiana area. And as we know, in those 3 days, it just rained and rained. I like to call it Noah's Ark in 4 days and 4 nights instead of 40 days and 40 nights for that part of Texas. But it had nothing to steer it. So it's just a beach ball sitting there in no currents. And finally, it got a nudge and started making its move to the northeast. But it sat there for a few days inland, which is also good news. It was inland at that time. So this is what we look at as meteorologists to figure out where a storm will go. And the great news about the forecast for Harvey, 2 days out, the forecast for it to be 10 miles, 90 miles, 100 miles east of South Padre. It was 90 miles east of South Padre. The track error was 10 miles, 48 hours out from that particular point. That helps all of us prepare better in a case like, no, we don't need to overkill on this one. It's not going to hit us. That's really important when it comes to resource deployment, because you might need those resources at another point in the season. So real quick to close out, this leads into where Odee's going to speak here. Become hurricane strong. Next slide, by the way. What does it mean to be hurricane strong? Well, find out this website, hurricanestrong.org. There are videos in English and in Spanish to help you build resiliency and reduce risk to your home and to your community. And the final slide here, the second to last slide, where to prepare, hurricanes.gov/prepare. You can get everything you need to know from the lower right here, determining your risk, developing and executing your preparedness plans. And we have a lot on social media in English and in Spanish, and also the page itself is in English and in Spanish. Next slide. Again, this is the last slide. What really matters, it only takes one, and hurricane strong. And I hope I showed you enough today to realize that these 2 things are hugely important, and that we have to prepare this year as if this is our year for Harvey or our year for Beulah again. And with that, I'll turn back over the floor to y'all. Thank you very much again for having us.
Harry, thank you. Thank you so very much. So much information to share, very valuable information. It's really, we're taken aback just by hearing and seeing the graphs of how, as you said, it only takes one, and we need to be prepared. So I do want to thank you for a wonderful presentation. And, I invite you to continue to be with us throughout, the remainder of today's program, as I know Odee has a great update. And then also we do or may have some questions that, we would love to hear from you as well. So Odee, thank you once again for joining us. We're excited to hear from you, of course, on behalf of the City of Brownsville. So welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Odee Leal. I am the City of Brownsville Emergency Management Coordinator. This year's presentation will be presented a little different from previous years, but we will do our best to provide you with all the information necessary to be ready for hurricane season, which we already started on June 1st and ends November 30th. So with that being said, I ask if you have any questions, first to please hold our questions till the end of the presentation, and this will allow us more time to be able to explain any questions you may have, and we'll be ready to answer anything for you. So moving along, next slide, please. So why is preparedness important? Being prepared is important for so many reasons. The most important thing is that we will bring peace of mind to you and your family. We need to keep in mind that sometimes, especially right now during this COVID pandemic that we're going through, it's a little bit tougher for us to be able to explain to our families what we're going through with COVID. And then on top of that, it's hurricane season. So it's a little bit more difficult. So if we are being prepared and we already have a plan in place, that'll allow us more time to be able to explain and have more time with our families, enjoying and knowing that we are prepared for any hurricane that might be coming our way, or any flood. Because it doesn't take a hurricane to wipe out power. A flood or it can cause damage to your homes. Keep that in mind. Always be prepared for any type of severe weather. Flooding can occur with any thunderstorm or persistent showers. So we go back and we think, I would say back in June and October of 2018, we suffered some drastic flooding in Brownsville. So if we did not have a hurricane, it was just a thunderstorm, a supercell that came over us and caused that flooding. Damage to homes can be caused by strong winds, tornadoes, and flooding. Be sure to have proper insurance to cover your home and vehicles during any type of a disaster. In order for us to do this, we must plan ahead. So if we do not have any type of flood insurance or home insurance, we should be looking into getting some now. Don't wait till a hurricane is in the Gulf coming our way to try to get that insurance. Now is the time to start planning. Next slide, please. Preparedness during the COVID-19 pandemic. We understand that your planning may be different this year because of the need to protect yourself and others from COVID. So give yourself plenty of time. Ensure that your disaster supply kit is ready with all the necessary essentials. On the next few slides, we'll be going through what is needed in your disaster supply kit. Keep in mind, home delivery or curbside pickup are the safest choices for buying disaster supplies. However, that might not be an option for everyone. If you are shopping in person at one of our local grocers, we ask for you to take the needed steps to protect your health and others when running essential errands around our city. Limit in-person visits to the pharmacy. Sign up for mail order delivery or calling your prescription ahead of time and use the drive-through windows or curbside pickup. Next slide, please. Here are several ways to ensure you and your family are prepared for any disaster. Step one would be to hold a family meeting. Discuss with them where you're going to evacuate to if the need would arise. Ensure your assets are protected to include your vehicles. Assess your home for vulnerable areas and secure your home. We always try to forget our outdoors, our patio furniture outside. Ensure that all that is tied down. If we have a trampoline, the trampoline is also tied down and turned over to ensure that nothing is flying and can break any of our windows. Make a plan for your pets. Notify your loved ones of your plan. This is very important because during a hurricane that's coming to Brownsville and we have family that lives out of town, our family starts panicking and wondering what we're doing. So we advise on what our plan is they will also have a peace of mind. Always keep a disaster kit handy. If anyone in your home has special medical assistance needs or is vulnerable in any emergency and they need assistance during a disaster, ensure you're registering them for 211. Now is the time to register for 211, not when a hurricane is in the Gulf. So if you have any loved ones that are going to be needing assistance, I urge you to contact 211 now. This number is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Records are purged every year. So if you registered for 211 last year, this year you will have to register again. Every March, those records are purged. So please, if you registered before in prior years they were not purged. We just started purging those records this year. So the state asks everyone who needs to register for 211 to register on a yearly basis now to ensure that we have updated, accurate information for all our residents. Now is the time to take a few extra steps to prepare in case of a hurricane evacuation. Next slide, please. In your disaster supply kit, there's a few things I will go over that you should have that will help you during a hurricane. Water, 1 gallon of water per person per day, a 3-day supply. For evacuation, a 2-week supply for your home. Always keep in mind that when we're at home, you might think that seems to be a lot of water that we're asking for. But if for any reason our water company does not supply us with water, we at least know we have enough water to be able to wash our hands, drink, and use it for essential needs. Food, all non-perishable food, easy to prepare items, a 3-day supply for evacuation and a 2-week supply for your home. A flashlight that's battery operated. Battery operated or hand crank radio or NOAA radio if possible. Extra batteries, a first aid kit, medications, a 7-day supply at least, and medical items. During this time, I always advise our residents that starting June 1st, we should always ask our doctors for prescription for 3-month supply. Giving us a 90-day supply, that will give us enough time to prepare just in case a hurricane is coming and we have to evacuate our loved ones or ourselves having enough medication. Multi-purpose tool like a Swiss Army knife. Sanitation and personal hygiene items. Copies of your personal documents, your medication list, any pertinent medical information that you may need, proof of your address, deed, lease of your home, passport, birth certificates, insurance policies, a cell phone with a charger. Keep in mind that our electricity might go out, and what are we going to charge our phones with? So ensure that you have either a battery operated charger or a backup charger. Family and emergency contact information. During this time, we stress and we forget. So to have these important contact numbers written down will be helpful for us. Extra cash. ATMs might not be the appropriate. If electricity goes out, an ATM is not going to be able to supply us with cash. Extra fuel for a generator and your vehicle. I always urge my family members, starting June 1st, half a tank is empty in their vehicles. Like that, they're always prepared if we ever have to evacuate. So try to instill in yourselves and in your families, once your tank hits half a tank on June 1st, during hurricane season, that is considered empty. So you fill your tank to full again. During this COVID season, we must also not forget, inside the disaster supply kit, we need to include the essentials needed during the COVID pandemic. So a cloth face covering is always needed during this time. We should also have hand sanitizer inside our disaster kit. That is an essential. Next slide, please. Before the storm, look for vulnerabilities in and around your home. As I stated earlier, your outside patio furniture, your water hose, the water hose reel, all that stuff either needs to be brought into our garage or tied down. Assess your roof for any leaks. Trim your trees prior to any tropical storm or hurricane warning. Know your scheduled pickup. If you do not know your scheduled brush pickup, please contact 546-HELP. That's 546-4357, or visit the City of Brownsville website for your brush pickup collection schedule. Check all your doors, board up or shutter your windows. Flip your trampoline and protect your pool. Sandbags will be done before hurricane season. We just issued out sandbags for the residents of Brownsville 2 weeks ago. We will be having another sandbag distribution if the need arises before anything comes into the Gulf. We will not be distributing sandbags during a hurricane that's in the Gulf. We're trying to alleviate the panic our residents go through to try to get sandbags. We're trying to prepare before an event, so that is the reason we're giving out sandbags prior to. Next slide, please. Riding out the storm. If you and your family decide to ride out a tropical storm or hurricane, always stay indoors. Have a safe room within your home, away from the front and back door and any windows. More than likely, the power will be lost, so make sure you have a battery-powered radio to listen to updates on the storm, and always have a battery-operated flashlight. Evacuate immediately if you smell natural gas, which has the odor of sulfur or rotten eggs, or see a broken gas line, and call 911. Next slide, please. Shelters. Shelters will be open upon a decision made by the city manager or mayor. The location of the shelter will be determined based on the availability of facilities. Your shelter location will be different this year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. If a shelter is opened, residents must bring their own items. Residents are only provided a facility to stay in. So ensure that you bring your own blankets, your non-perishable foods, all that you will have to take with you to a shelter. From a previous experience that we had a couple of years ago, I evacuated during an exercise that we had within the state of Texas. And let me tell you, that evacuation, I evacuated to see what our residents would go through, just in case they would have to be evacuated. It wasn't a good experience. It's not the same thing as if you would voluntarily evacuate yourself to a loved one's home, where you're going to have a peace of mind and know where you're at. So please ensure that you're always prepared to evacuate if the need arises, like that you will not have to shelter at a shelter. Being with loved ones is always better. Texas mass care shelters are provided by the state of Texas in San Antonio and Laredo during mandatory evacuations. If you need to go to a disaster shelter, follow the CDC recommendations for staying safe and healthy in a public disaster shelter, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. Things will change because of COVID, so ensure that you are prepared. Ensure that you're keeping abreast of the changes and what is needed for you to be able to stay at a shelter if that need arises. Next slide, please. Sheltering personal safety for COVID-19. Be prepared to take your cleaning items with you, like soap, hand sanitizer, disinfecting wipes, or general household cleaning supplies to disinfect surfaces you may need to touch regularly. Maintain at least 6 feet between you and the person not part of your immediate family while at the shelter, by avoiding crowds or gatherings in groups as much as possible. Follow CDC COVID-19 protective options. Wash your hands regularly. Cover coughs and sneezes, and follow the shelter policies for wearing cloth face coverings. Avoid sharing food and drink with anyone if possible. Anyone over 2 years old should use a face covering while in these facilities. Follow disaster shelter policies and procedures designed to protect everyone in the shelter. Avoid touching frequently touched surfaces such as handrails as much as possible, and ensure that you're using a hand sanitizer that's 60% alcohol. Watch your children to ensure that they stay at least 6 feet apart from anyone who is not part of your household. If you and your family feel sick when you arrived at a shelter and start to feel sick while sheltering, please tell shelter staff immediately. Next slide, please. Evacuation. We have two forms of evacuation. We have a voluntary evacuation, which you are not required to evacuate, but you should take advantage of this time if you may. Mandatory evacuation is when the mayor decides if a mandatory evacuation is needed, and the City of Brownsville at this time has never been under a mandatory evacuation. We always try to exercise the voluntary evacuation of our residents. That will help us to ensure that we do not have the panic within our city. When an evacuation is ordered, the City of Brownsville transit buses will cease regular scheduled services and begin emergency evacuation service. If you evacuate, turn off all your electricity, main water valves, and gas in your home. Remember to fill your vehicle's gas tank. A typical 4-hour drive to San Antonio may take longer due to traffic during a mandatory evacuation. Take food and water for the drive and important documents and medication. If you have pets, ensure you take your pet's immunization records, medication, a carrier, and a leash. Next slide, please. After the storm, the city and residents will begin the cleanup process. To report damage of your home, call 546-HELP. That's 546-4357. You should continue to use preventive actions like washing your hands and wearing a face covering during cleanup and/or when returning home. Be sure to wear gloves, closed-toe shoes, mosquito repellent, and proper clothing when preparing to clean. It is important to bundle and separate your brush and debris in your alley or front yard for the city to pick it up. Make sure your children and pets are not playing in or drinking stagnant water. There is a great chance for health risks from flood waters. Traffic lights may not work. Be cautious when attempting to drive and approaching any intersection. Next slide, please. If you are injured or ill, contact your medical provider for treatment recommendations. Keep wounds clean and prevent infection. Remember, assessing medical care may be more difficult than usual during a pandemic. Dealing with disasters can cause stress and strong emotions, particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic. It is natural to feel anxiety, grief, and worry. Coping with these feelings and getting help when you need it will help you, your family, and your community to recover. Always remember, next slide, please. When there's water on the road, turn around. Please do not drive through water. Keep in mind that we do not know what the street is like on the bottom of that water, how long that water has been stagnant there. So as you see on the video, on the picture there, the water over that street was caving in. So we would drive through there, our vehicle will cave into the ground. So please turn around and don't drown. Thank you. Any questions?
Odee, I don't know if you can hear me now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Great. You know, as I was hearing this, it really, you know, makes me think how we take it for granted that we in our city have been very blessed to have not been, you know, we haven't experienced a mandatory evacuation, and we of course have experienced, you know, thunderstorms, a lot of rain, but not to the caliber of other cities have throughout the state and of course our nation. Where can we find more information regarding the preventive measures and the steps for, of course, our citizens and our businesses to better prepare should we experience this type of, you know, of a natural disaster?
So they can always call us at our EOC number, which is 504-7405 for information. They can also log on to the City of Brownsville website at cob.us, and under our emergency management page, we have some links there to FEMA and to ready.gov.
Now, I know that you mentioned that our city, of course, has been very aggressive and very proactive in preparation for hurricane season. And we know that we have 2 different dates in which the city was, you know, having or giving away the sandbags. Do we know the future dates, or were those the only 2 dates in which businesses and citizens can go and pick up bags? One, and then second, in continuation to my question, is there limitations to the number of bags, and can you only go once? What is the process?
So this last time that we distributed sandbags on 4 different days, and we did 1 day per district, and the citizen has the possibility of registering if they would like online. or they just have to show up at the location and show their driver's license and their utility bill. They must live within the City of Brownsville city limits and pay their water bill through one of the companies within the City of Brownsville. So they were we gave out 8 bags per resident and 10 bags for businesses. So we do not have the exact date yet of our next sandbag distribution, but we will keep our residents posted through our BTX Cares website, our City of Brownsville website, and then through any other social media outlets that we have.
Would you mind repeating for your social media, under what name should we be searching for the City of Brownsville for those that have yet to follow our City of Brownsville through Facebook?
So the City of Brownsville social media is City of Brownsville. We also have one for Brownsville Office of Emergency Management that they can also follow.
Thank you. Barry, I do have a question that just came in. It states, is Niña stronger than Niño to generate a hurricane?
I just lost that.
Okay, so we received a question and it's addressed to you. It states, is Niña stronger than Niño to generate a hurricane?
So when you look at the overall season forecast, and you saw that big red rectangle in a lot of those slides, that's the main development region. That's where the forecast is made for. I want to stress again that in a La Nina or neutral season, it favors those friends of hurricanes to make the season more active than less active. But I want everyone to forget that, okay? Because regardless of El Nino or La Nina, it only takes one storm to form and thread the needle to get to Texas, and in some cases get to the Rio Grande Valley. So a southwestern Gulf storm like Brett or even like Harvey could form in a window of opportunity and make our season memorable and hopefully not too catastrophic, and it won't matter what the El Nino or La Nina was. So if you are talking to people around the U.S., the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, across the countries of Mexico, the U.S., the Caribbean nations, then you're looking at this forecast and saying, okay, you have better odds this year because of the La Nina neutral phase combined with that AMO than you would otherwise. But to say individual location, making that forecast, the odds are slightly higher for a direct strike of hurricane force winds or a direct strike of a hurricane based on this year's forecast than on average. And what I mean by that is for a direct strike hurricane to Cameron County, which is what we're concerned with, it's 5.8% this year versus 3.9% on average. That's not much of a difference. So it doesn't really matter, but if that storm is ours, it won't matter whether it was La Nina, El Nino, or La Nada. It doesn't really matter. So of interest, yes, if you have a weak, a neutral or a La Nina, or especially weak La Nina pattern, it does favor those other elements to make the season busier in the main development region, but it really doesn't say a lot about our neck of the woods here.
Barry, thank you. Thank you for that, the insight in regards to, again, it goes back to what you said earlier and through your presentation. It only takes one. And with that said, I think I have one more incoming question. If you give me 1 second here. The audience is asking if they are citizens and of course business community, can they request the hurricane preparedness packets or packages that you have? How do they access this?
So usually in previous years before COVID, we would give out a hurricane package. Due to COVID, we are trying to not disseminate as much materials per se, to try to not spread any type of exposure. So We can, if they want to call us, we can try to do something for them. We can always email them the information if they would like. They can go ahead and email eoc@cob.us, and we can go ahead and send them an email with the information.
Odee, I'm sorry, would you be able to repeat that so Danielle can go ahead and add this to her chat, and all those that are following us right now can go ahead and take note of it?
Yes, ma'am. It's eoc@cob.us.
Wonderful. So Barry and Odee, we really appreciate your time. This is valuable information for our citizens of Brownsville and of course, our business community. Before we end our program today, I welcome you for any closing remarks on behalf of your respective organizations. And, most importantly, what is the message from the City of Brownsville and the National Weather Service during this pandemic to make sure that we're preparing for hurricane season? As Barry said, we don't know, as long as, it only takes one, and that could change the path of everything. And, as we do this, our city is very aggressive and very, very proactive. So we want to remain proactive versus being reactive. So Odee, I'll start with you, followed by Barry, and then we should be able to adjourn today's program.
So I asked the residents if they have not prepared, now is the time to prepare. Let's not give it another day, as we do not know Mother Nature. So if you have not prepared, and like Barry said, it takes one, and we must keep in mind, we do not need a hurricane to have a disaster in the city of Brownsville. Any thunderstorm that we can get can cause the city to flood in certain areas. So if you do not have a plan, please work on your plan today, make that priority today, and be prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Barry?
So I wanted to add to that the idea of more to the story than the category. And, for years we highlighted people getting familiar with category 1 through 5. And it's been a wonderful thing that people in the public realm at all levels of society understand this. But the category only represents the force of the hurricane, winds. So a category 1 is 74 miles per hour wind. A category 5 is 156 mile per hour wind, and the other categories are in between. And you can find that information at hurricanes.gov. The problem is, as Odee just mentioned, we can have many more impacts from other elements. There are 4 elements to the hurricane envelope. And our number one here in Brownsville is flooding rainfall. And we've all seen it. In 2018, we see it like yesterday. We had a 2-hour thunderstorm, and there was minor flooding in some areas. Imagine if we had 20 inches of rain instead of 2, how much flooding there might be. So are we prepared for that? And then you have storm surge towards the coast that does extend into the east side of town, but not as much on the west side. And you can also get tornadoes. Hurricane Beulah was a record tornado producer all time, and much of them were in the state of Texas, north of the valley, but they were in the state. They caused millions of dollars in damage. The Weather Service is here to provide that level of information to let you know what the hazards will rank for any type of hurricane. So if the next hurricane is at Beulah, we're going to focus initially on wind and surge, but we're going to really highlight the flooding rainfall. The success story of Harvey was exactly that. For Houston, Galveston, and Southeast Texas, the highlight was 50 inches of rain possible and potentially devastating to catastrophic flood damage. And people got the message. And because they got the message, there was not as much evacuation done there, because the worst thing that you could have in a metropolitan area is millions of people on the roads when the roads flood with 3, 4, 5 feet of water. Where are they going to go, and how safe will that be? So we'll be here to let you all know what those hazard rankings are and what the potential impacts are. This isn't going to necessarily be a local impact to your particular home or your particular business, but it will be a community impact. Now, with that in mind, with the preparedness side of things, look at your own risk assessment. Look at where your home or business is, the susceptibility to flooding, the susceptibility to wind, the susceptibility possibly to storm surge. And make your preparedness plans around those susceptibilities now so you know what to execute, whether you're going to stay or go. Our website, by the way, is weather.gov/RGV, really easy to remember. And when we get into a situation where there's a hurricane watch or warning, or even a tropical cyclone watch or warning, which is all three for storms, depressions, or hurricanes, our website will light up with the information you need to make the best decision on the impacts that we expect to be highest. So if it's a slow mover that may just be a tropical storm, we're going to highlight flooding, flooding, flooding. And we'll have all the information you need to help make that decision. If you're near an area that can flood from the sea, for example, the east side of Brownsville, and it comes through the port, we'll have that information as well to show you how high that water depth might get from the inundation from the sea. And if it's winds that's our biggest concern, we're going to provide that information for the potential impact for winds that may be 74 miles per hour, which is a pretty big impact compared to 111 or greater. That's a huge impact on a lot of structures here in the city. So we will have all that information available for you to understand what your risk can be by assessing the threat and assessing your own vulnerabilities and exposures and making your decision from there. And that can be done now to prepare. That can be done before the event when we are looking at what the potential impacts from each of those four elements of the hurricane are. Wind, well, first we'll start with flooding rain, but then wind, storm surge flooding, and tornadoes.
Barry, thank you. Thank you very much. And as you were speaking, for those that don't know where our office is, we're in downtown Brownsville, right across the bridge, and of course adjacent to UTRGB and TAC. And we have a beautiful landscaping. We have our Wasaka, and we the chamber have about 37 palm trees. So you were talking about preparedness, and we start seeing just, everything. Of course, there's this nice cool weather, or it appears to be very gloomy right now outside, and some rain. Well, we can see the wind just taking over slowly. So even though it's a beautiful sight, our concern always is to remain to prepare and to remain again be very aware of the surroundings. Should, of course, we need to evacuate from our office too. And I know that's the same mentality that our businesses have. Of course, our citizens, as you said, Barry, our community as a whole, we're affected as a community. Again, on behalf of our board of directors and our team, we appreciate and value your time. This has been a wonderful presentation. We encourage our followers, our members, and of course the audience to contact the City of Brownsville for any further questions. They can go ahead and reach the city at 546-4357, which is 546-HELP. We also encourage them to, of course, visit their websites, their social media platforms, and especially social media is constantly being updated. Should you have any questions about sandbags or anything such as, visit vtxcares.com. That website is extremely useful and very helpful. It gives you information about the existing pandemic, the resources, the tools, and as Odee mentioned, there's information, of course, in preparedness for hurricane season. And of course, once again, we encourage you to visit the National Weather Service website, which is weather.gov/RGB. And of course, you can always count on your local chamber to keep you posted and updated. Should we not be able to have an answer for your question, we will make sure that we reach out to our community partners to better assist you. So we welcome you to call us at 542-4341. And with that said, our program today comes to an end. We want to wish everyone a wonderful afternoon and of course a very blessed weekend. Please remain safe, continue to practice social distancing, and we encourage everyone to utilize their masks as they enter a place of business or they're out, of course, running personal errands. We all have a social responsibility, and let's go ahead and help everyone and be respectful of everyone. We have a social responsibility to respect others as well. So with that said, once again, thank you. We wish you a wonderful weekend. And again, to our guest speakers, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Likewise. Thank you, Odee. Thank you, Barry.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Esme. I really appreciate the time.